I'd like to call to order the Plan Commission meeting for June 7th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Attendance roll call.
Commissioner Graff. Here. Commissioner Oliver.
Here.
Alderman Madden.
Here.
Commissioner Gazana.
Here.
Commissioner Buckmaster.
Here.
Commissioner Bartlett.
Here.
Mayor Pitfalski.
Here.
Planner Trepetowski.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Statement of public notice.
The agenda was posted and distributed to all news media requesting notification in accordance with the open meeting laws on Friday, June 3rd, and then amended on Monday, June 6th.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes for May 3rd.
Move to approve the minutes as read.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Public hearing. A public hearing for the conditional use grant in accordance with the Muskego zoning ordinance for the purpose of allowing a mini storage facility located along North Cape Road and south of Loomis Drive, tax key number 2259.981.002.
So this item is tied to resolution PC 038-2022. I'll kind of give an overview of the project so that way the public hearing comments, if any, can kind of feed off that. So the proposal is right now to build in the southeast corner of the city a new storage facility. The owner of this property who recently purchased it did recently purchase a lot to the north of this that does house some businesses and some storage facilities also. So as much as this would function as its independent site, there's some storage kind of in that general area. In the zoning district that's there, a conditional use grant is needed. That's why the public hearing is being held tonight. The proposal is to add 5 new storage buildings totaling a little over 28,000 square feet, approximately 109 units of varying sizes. Operations and office, the office kind of use, if you want to call it, that would take place in one of those northern buildings. So there wouldn't be any kind of new office on site. So they would just be, vacant storage units, no office. Typical hours of 8 to 4 for office and Saturday by appointment, and then 6 to 9 is general access for this site. This property is governed by the Durham Hill Design Guide as well as the General Design Guide here in the city of Muskego. Typically, they look to require or encourage 50% masonry and four-sided architecture. Typically, what we look at in buildings like this is if they're visible from a road or surrounding properties in the city, they look more highly on the architecture. And if it's facing like internal to a site, usually the architecture isn't as big of a concern because you don't see it. But in the case of this building, the most predominant elevations would be like the western elevation of the main building on the west part of the site, as well as the northern edge of the northern building on this property, as well as some of the ends of some of the buildings that face southward. As far as the existing proposed masonry goes, on that predominant west side of Building 2, which is the one that faces along North Cape, has about 27% approximately of the wall as a masonry or a stone or brick wainscoting or veneer, kind of over the first 3 feet of the wall. Due to the elevation changes, though, as this building goes northward, there is kind of an exposed concrete foundation wall that starts to be exposed due to the nature of the sloping terrain on the site. And that's one thing that is noted that is not shown as being masonry right now, but being that you're going to have masonry above it, that's one of the things staff is going to suggest that Plan Commission may want to discuss on this topic. If they want to see that masonry coating go down over that veneer, as that's often done on a lot of residential homes when they have exposures. So that's one thing the Plan Commission may want to talk about, is that would help up some of the masonry on this. Otherwise, the upper portion of the wall is a metal panel. You will see that they are showing some windows to kind of give the building a little bit more residential character, trying to meet some of the intentions of the design guide. They're showing some minimal overhangs in the building, showing a few cupola features, and then a large sign would be on the center portion of the building. The interior facing buildings that you really don't see are predominantly full metal panel. And that's something that alone is typically not a huge concern of staff, as long as it's not facing, like I said, neighboring properties or public roadways, strictly kind of hidden view, if you want to call it that. A lot of those facades too have large areas of doorway, but the Plan Commission definitely probably wants to talk about, what they see with the architecture. Is this what they see as the intention of storage units going forward in the city here in the Muskego, specifically looking at the design guides and that Durham Hill design guide most specifically. Otherwise, overhead doors, roof, and building trim are all on a matte black finish. As far as the general site goes, kind of a triangular shaped site, definitely leads to some challenges for layout, but I think the applicant did a good job organizing them in the best way they could, especially since the one building kind of serves as kind of a screening feature. That's why I think the architecture is so important of that western facing building. As far as the site goes, the only issue staff saw as a question for sites is, being this is a newly designed commercial site, there is an area on the southwest part of the site that has curb and gutter or curbing on it. Staff is recommending that and the resolution is drafted as such that there be curbing added to the eastern area where there's no curb and the northern area of the site, just to keep the site consistent. And if there are concerns with snow removal, they would be allowed to go with like a more of a mountal curb instead of a vertical face to allow for easier snow removal, as is done in the City Hall parking lot out here. They are proposing that the site in a couple areas be enclosed with a more decorative metal fencing. It's not meant to serve as a screen, but more so just as a barrier and safety feature. And the approvals noted that no outside storage or overnight parking is allowed on site, which is typical for most sites like this, unless specific waivers are granted. They do show some landscaping, mostly focusing on the west side of building number 2 and kind of the corners of the building. Definitely something the city forester and city staff will have to look at in more detail. But we're thinking there should be maybe a little more additional plants, varying heights along that North Cape Road elevation, help break up that long elevation that can become a little monotonous. Signage will be held to our normal signage standards. Lighting details, there have been some details provided. We'll need more, though, as part of the building permit process. So that's kind of the overview of the project. I think we can start with the public hearing then.
All right. At this time, anyone would like to be heard for or against this proposal, please step forward and give your name and address. Don't all rush up. Would the petitioner like to add anything? The Plan Commission will be discussing this in further detail when we get to resolution PC 040-2022.
Yeah, my name is Brian Fisher. My address is 13500 Watertown Plank Road, Elm Grove, Wisconsin. Represent the owners, Bob and Christine Aaron, and we're pretty much here to answer questions when we get to the Plan Commission portion, but we are obviously in favor for the project.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard for or against? Seeing none, I'll declare this public hearing closed. Continuing on with consent business.
Resolution PC 040-2022, approval of a 2-lot certified survey map for Joan Coney on Williams Drive. Resolution PC 042-2022, approval of the sale of fireworks for TNT Fireworks in the Walmart parking lot. Resolution PC 043-2022, approval of the sale of fireworks for TNT Fireworks in the Picket Safe parking lot. And resolution PC 049-2022, approval of a right-of-way vacation of Madison Court as part of the Ren development.
Could I get a motion for that?
Motion to approve and growth.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Old business for consideration, resolution PC 056-2021, approval of an annual review for Fry Automotive located on Loomis Drive. Any updates?
Mr. Fry actually has to come in front of the attorney and the judge tomorrow night to kind of provide them an update. And it sounds like, I think they're going to give him a little more time because he is showing some progress with getting some survey work done, but I think it needs to pick up the pace a bit. I think the attorney is going to talk to him about that tomorrow.
Thank you. Any questions? Continuing on with new business for consideration, Resolution PC 038-2022, approval of a building site and operation plan and conditional use grant for Robert and Christine Aaron of North Cape Real Estate LLC located on North Cape Road and south of Loomis Road, tax key number 22599811002.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right, this is the subject of the public hearing. Adam went over most of this before, when we were introducing the public hearing. Any discussion? Questions, comments on the design?
Was there any fencing around the entire perimeter?
So the buildings themselves kind of plank portions of the property, but there is an area on the, would be the southeast corner of the, I'm sorry, let me get my bearings here. On the northwest corner, excuse me, that would have some fencing, just an area kind of bumps out between two buildings, and there is fencing by the entry, which is on the southern side of the site. So basically where there isn't building wall, there would be decorative fencing. The only exception is on the northeast corner, as on the northeast corner, there's kind of a steep grade change in a retention pond. There's really no reason to have a fence there.
Could you just explain, or
Is your microphone on?
Adam, could you explain or just kind of review, so before the, so CUG is allowed under B4, so this use is allowed?
Yeah, it is an allowed use with the conditional use grant, subject to plan commission review as far as site layout, architecture, and that kind of stuff goes. This is similar to the zoning that the storage just north of this has, and then there's some kind of kitty corner to the northwest, all older buildings, but existing.
Okay, so that area is B4 as well?
Predominantly.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Jeremy.
Hi, I just have two questions. I guess number one, if there's a slight modification to the site plan as the applicant works through it, I assume that staff can handle that. In other words, 25-foot aisleways versus 30-foot aisleways. It's possible and they run to the state and get approvals, or run to our review and get approvals that may not be in compliance. When we have all these open doors facing one another, that I believe the state code requires 30 feet, unless it's sprinklered and such. But I assume staff could address that, or should we?
Yeah, if there's something that especially, especially from your experiences, for sure, it's probably good to get it for the record or for the applicant's team. But yeah, if there would be slight changes, guess that, there's only so much you can do at the site. So that probably leads to a shrinking of a building, I would guess, if there would be drive aisles. And I know they've worked with our local fire department, but that doesn't mean that.
Yeah, there's
the final approval.
Yeah, there's a building requirement where they're over the square footage allowed for, I believe they're over the square footage allowed for all these buildings together. And they would have to be 30 feet apart to have all the door openings facing one another. So, and then the other thing is we're pretty consistent with the masonry requirements, at least all the time I've been here. But on this building, we're only at was it 27 or 37%? I guess my feeling on it is we should be consistent.
Yeah, and on a 3-foot, on some of these walls are decent size just to accommodate the overhead doors. That's why we kind of wrote up that we think 3 is a little bit light. Now, I think we've always talked about before, I'm not a fan of just increasing masonry just for the sake of increasing masonry. It's all about the overall design. But if the design is more simple, like a lot of storage units are, masonry is one way to do something to kind of jazz it up. And then, so that was one of the notes that we talked about that we'd like Plan Commission to talk about. What do we do with it? Is it a certain percentage? Is it a certain height? Is it up to a window line? What is that? And then the idea also of, can it be brought down as like a veneer over that concrete foundation, so you don't have this one material, different material, at least maybe keep it to 2.
Adam, when you described the project previously, you mentioned there was going to be a discussion for masonry on one building, and I didn't get to this drawing, the plan drawing. What buildings are we talking about?
So, I think any of the ones that are visible from a roadway. So let's say, for example, if all the buildings right now consistently have a 3-foot band of masonry, if there was some height selected as a different height, I would think we would carry that uniformly to any wall elevation that has that masonry veneer. So we'd be consistent. I think it's really any elevation that has masonry on it, but specifically the the building you see with the windows on it and the signage in the middle, kind of the center picture with no garage doors, that's the predominant view that faces North Cape Road. So that's west facing on North Cape Road. It's the westernmost building. So I would think that would be one of the most predominant views. And then, you start to see, some of the ends. I think it's,
Building 1 is the one I was referring to. I see it up there in this view.
yeah, building 1 and building 2, those elevations are probably the most predominant because they're longer elevations. A lot of the other elevations are just, kind of the short stubby end, for lack of a better term. So there's less space to work with on some of those. But if we were to increase the height on a certain building, I would think we'd want that height to be uniform to any building that has masonry on its respective elevation.
And I'll just comment that, part of the reason why we went with this design, Q, is that the existing storage facilities that are on this site that exist today have the wainscot at the same height. So we're trying to be consistent with that. That building is due to be repainted, so the idea will be that the original building would match this in terms of color. Additionally, being it's a rural look, most, kind of barn or farm shed type facilities don't typically have a 50% masonry, and it's usually at foundation height. And again, we're above foundation height, but we felt it was more a rural character than if we tried to put 50% masonry on. It just didn't seem to look right to us. So as it said, for the sake of masonry, we didn't want to do it just for the sake of masonry. We wanted to have a consistent look. If pulling the masonry up a little bit and maybe just getting a little bit above even the windows at the bottom would make some sense. I don't think we wouldn't get to 50%, but if you want to try to have the windows maybe break it up a little bit by kind of breaking that line, I think we would be fine with that. Also on this rendering, the foundation will be poured concrete below the stone, and it will be painted the same color as the stone. It reads a little lighter here. It's just because the stippling that comes with the AutoCAD program makes one look darker than the other, but it'll be the same color. And we would certainly enhance the landscaping as Adam mentioned, on the west end of building 1, which is the northernmost building, where that's facing North Cape. We would add some additional landscaping there, and as the building grade falls away on building 2, we would enhance the landscaping as the grade falls away. And we'd be happy to throw a couple extra arborvitae or upright junipers between the windows to help break up that elevation and monotony.
Okay. Adam, first of all, let me say, I think considering the use of the building, you did a very nice job of decorating it. The question I have, are the windows actual see-through, or are they full windows?
They will not be actual vision glass.
Okay.
Into the space. And that's security. That's more of a security thing than anything else.
Right.
Yeah, we have that in a lot of other buildings in the city, so that's not a rarity by any means. One question, you talk about the foundation. Did you say painted or color applied to the masonry? What's the technique going to be used on that?
Paint. It'll be painted. Mm-hmm.
And I guess I don't think this design guide prohibits, but I guess we've had some buildings that have had some issues with painting masonry. It's just a maintenance nightmare when a lot of this building will be maintenance free. My other worry to the Plan Commission is when someone tries to paint something, especially since the veneer brick, it's probably gonna have some variation in it. It's not going to look like it's not like you're going to be confused and think, oh, it's brick, it's all brick. It's still going to look different. In my opinion, I think you're going to pick a color to match. I get that, but it's not going to match every color because there's going to be some variation.
That's why I was offering the additional landscaping. We talked about that, and I've talked to the owners. They're here with me now, and we're perfectly fine with, and we can work with the forestry department to put a proper level of screening in those locations as, again, the foundations drop away due to grade.
Was there a reason that it can't be? I mean, just thinking of home construction, I understand this is a different building type maybe, but there are many people that do expose basements that have their siding or veneer, whatever it is, carry all the way down to grade.
Right. This particular material was meant to hang off of a plywood, sub base, or substrate versus concrete. So there might be a way to do that, but it's meant more, again, in the residential, use to be a substitute to siding, more of a decorative, where you see stone on a house, that would be the typical use for it. We're just extending it to the commercial use here.
I've got a second home that's got an exposed basement that is currently blocked right now and painted, and, well, it looks horrible. So we are adding masonry to it. It's a product that we're putting on that is made to be applied to plywood. You can easily put furring strips, apply plywood, put it down, make it look decently. And I would encourage the Plan Commission to not just settle for painting on this. I guess one of the other problems I have with that, for one, the masonry, I think we need to stick to the design guide on the, I have no issue with storage units at all, but I quite honestly, I think we should do our best to try to mask them from looking like storage units. They're not real popular out here, but I don't have an issue with storage units. I just want them to look and kind of bring that quality up. The elevation of the building, I mean, quite honestly, it looks like a cattle something. It's just long and straight. I wish we had something, some dormers or something to break it up, fake dormers or something to just kind of break up that long, straight, flat look to the face of it. I mean, it's.
So, I'm having a hard time just trying to visualize this. So it's B4, but so where are we? Are we RCE anywhere?
Maybe westward. I mean, this lot has always been shown as commercial in our comp plan, and that's what this would fall under. As you go northward to Loomis Drive, there's some commercial businesses there, and then further north to Loomis Road, the corners are kind of commercial, except for the Champions Village corner. There could be some RCE westward possibly, but when you go south, not too far, you're at the landfill proper land.
So, and then the other storage units, is there one over there?
There's right straight north of this is a complex of traditional storage units, kind of like this, that has a little office building. North of that's a building that's a little bit different. It has some storage units in the back, but it's more of a office kind of building. It used to be an auto repair at one place. And then kind of Kinney Corner to the northwest, there's some kind of traditional storage units set back.
All right. And did we hold to the design guide on those?
One of them is partial masonry. I think the northern one is full masonry. Where your office is that full masonry?
One wall is full masonry, the wall that faces north. The rest is wainscot with one that faces south is actually entirely wood side.
And I think one thing that's a little bit different with those buildings and this one, which maybe something like that could apply here is, so the northern of the two buildings you see on the photo has kind of like an overhang feature in the front, kind of has this front entry feel, even though I don't know if it's really formally the front door. And then the building that's immediately north of this, the storage building, also the area where where the storage units are is kind of long and fairly plain, but the area that bumps out that was like a little office space, we've had different commercial tenants in there before, that too kind of has a little covered feature that just gives that long space a little more dynamic to it.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with the storage units. I'm struggling with trying to, it just seems like and I agree, the way you put the way you architected that looks good from the top. I'm just trying to picture this driving down the road and then seeing this, this.
Well, I don't know if you could bring the renderings up again, if that'd be possible. Yeah. Kind of give you better, there's
or the
right
3D.
up on the board.
These probably.
I mean, it's just
there.
it's sort of a cluster here, right?
Correct. I mean, I would agree. It looks almost like it would be, a stable, like a horse stable property to it. And, so I kind of like, which is a clean look, decorative fence. It's, secure and everything. So I think it has a rural feel. The roof pitch is very shallow. So if we put a dormer, it would never be seen. So, that'd be tough. But that's why we had the cupolas. And, if adding another cupola or two would help, as well. But I do think if we added a little bit more landscaping, the landscaping plan, we tried as best we could to incorporate into the rendering. I do think that if we get some more deciduous or style trees in there, shrubs basically, more upright, that'd help break that up as well.
Is the roof pitch a product of a construction type, or is it just a design aesthetic that was selected? I mean, because you mentioned a low pitch. Well, you can raise a pitch, or is that not doable for some reason?
The major reason why is in self-storage, you go with a metal roof. It obviously is maintenance free, but it handles, weather well, and it's usually much more weather tight over time. If you go much steeper, then you start to get avalanching issues when you get the freeze thaw and gutters get torn off and it becomes a huge maintenance item. So this is actually steeper than I would normally have done. And oftentimes we'll just do a single slope front to back and pitch it where we can away from the asphalt paving. So this is actually a little bit steeper pitch than we would have normally prepared, just because we wanted it to look a bit more fitting with the plan for the neighborhood, the overlay district.
So maybe I could make a suggestion just to move us forward a little bit. But if we were to support, so obviously we're not asking for four-sided architecture with the masonry all the way around, and it doesn't make sense with the doors, and it doesn't make sense, in the areas where it's not visible. We're talking about the elements that are visible from the street. In those areas, definitely bringing the masonry up to the bottom of the windows seems to make a lot of sense. But with that long stretch of masonry, if we're going to add masonry, it would seem that we could do that with a pattern that maybe would break that up a little bit, rather than to be this continuous hundreds of feet. What are we at here? 200 some feet of linear masonry.
I hear you're saying, and the only reason why, because being an architect myself, I like to break up those elevations, but to me, my worry is this is a rural area, it's a rural look, and that's not what you see in a rural building. And it's going to look like, okay, they wanted us to step the masonry up and down and here and there. So, just my opinion, because the few extra dollars it would cost to do that, that's why I was suggesting to get a look like that, if we took it even up just a little bit above the window sill, then the windows actually kind of break up that. If you know what I'm saying, if you just pulled it up just a little bit above the window sill.
And then add a decent amount of landscaping between each window section.
Yes.
I mean, that matches somewhat of what's out there now.
Because I think it'll get you what you want.
We're not looking for a, we know what this area is. I mean, it's okay. So.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned about the height of the masonry as I would be about the different facings that are exposed to the road. My personal take would be carry the masonry to the ground level and break it up with between the windows with landscaping. I think if you add inches of masonry to cover the window so we can hit 50%, we feel good about it, but I don't know that it makes a lot of difference to me.
Sure.
I don't think anybody's going to run by and look at it and say that's
Sure.
38.
And as long as we have a justification for these things, and it's not just willy-nilly, like every time somebody comes in, oh, I feel good about this one, let's just do 20% masonry. That's what sticks with me every time.
Understand that.
Because we're up here to be fair, right? So I just, some of this getting out of that, we have buildings here that are part of this property now, essentially, right? And they don't match those requirements. So I feel like that's an out right there, right? Given the nature of where this is at. I do think that detail is very odd, where the masonry is stopping 8 inches below the window. It just seems like a very odd detail to me. But so I would support the windows being adjusted or the masonry being adjusted.
Yeah, we can adjust the windows too. And I wouldn't say just move them. We'll just bring them down lower, because I don't think it'll look goofier if we drop the windows down and create more of a header above the top. So.
But are we saying driving the windows and keeping the masonry at 3 feet? Or are we still, I think the masonry has to have something done to it, something.
Well, definitely matching we got to carry that product all the way down. That's one thing. If that's.
Are you talking about over the foundation?
Yeah, over the foundation. And that's easy to do. That's a detail that we do all the time. So as far as the masonry itself, I think that, I guess I got to get a sense from the rest of the people on the board, or I'll propose it and we could vote on it. But I mean, I can see that running masonry all the way up on this building isn't going to make any sense. So I don't know that we need to get crazy with it. So.
I'm not suggesting running it up all the way, but I'd rather see it come up to the window than have the window come down, in my opinion.
I kind of like the idea that was kind of the jogging, because it does that might break up that a little bit. It's giving you, rather than just all straight horizontal lines, you'll see some more variation if it does go up past that sill to some height, but I don't think we should want to lower the windows.
Adam, what number did you say the masonry is currently at?
I think approximately 27, but
27.
Aaron, was that not accounting for the foundation exposure, right? So 27 of just the wall area, not counting the foundation. So by covering the foundation areas, in theory, it ups the percentage of masonry too.
Yeah, I'd go with it. Is move it up to include a portion of the window to break up that long linear path. But I still think some foliage of some sign to visually break it up even more so between the windows.
Between the windows?
Between the windows.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can support that.
Okay, so do we want to attempt to make a motion? Or?
I can go over what my notes say and tell me what you think.
Okay, let's start there.
So the way I heard it was raising up the masonry to be some point above the sill of the window, so it kind of gives us that variation. And then also include more landscaping in between the windows, as well as then bringing the veneer down to grade over that foundation wall. Is that the three items that I have in my notes?
Yeah.
And that would be on any of the sides that currently have masonry. So if the side doesn't have masonry, obviously they don't have to do it. If a side does have masonry, then they would carry that through, correct?
Yep, correct.
I can support that.
Okay, I'd like to make that the motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion on that motion to amend? All those in favor of the motion to amend, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any further discussion on the motion as amended? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to Resolution PC 039, 2022, approval of a building site and operation plan for Tailspin Bar located on Martin Drive.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
So Tailspin Bar and Grill is located on Martin Drive, is looking to kind of continue to be allowed to use a permanent, or an area they want to make permanent outdoor seating area. To give you a little bit of history, back in July of 2020, the applicant came in kind of during our, call it temporary seating COVID protocol, where we allowed people to be a lot more flexible with outdoor seating, dining, whatever. At that time, they were allowed to have their outdoor features there. It was kind of very temporary at that time. Last May, then, they came back in front of us to want what they call the permanent outdoor seating area. And at that time, the Plan Commission was noted as saying they were a little underwhelmed with the plan itself. I think it was a byproduct of we had a couple other people doing outdoor areas that were putting some pretty good work, effort, cost, design into it. And this one was a little more temporary based, even though they wanted on a more of a permanent scenario. So the owners have done some upgrades already. They kind of installed like this railing feature into the ground. They've paved an area. They built like a newer outdoor bar feature. So they've done a few things on their own to kind of get it looking nice, as well as then as part of what they're proposing now, they are proposing adding these like kind of more brick kind of column elements around that seating area. So we mentioned there's this fence. So they're adding, bricks around is the best way to word it, around these fence posts. So just once again, give it a little more of a presence and design. And now that they've put in the concrete in to cover the gravel, that helped clean things up a little bit. A second improvement they're also asking for would be to paint a blue band around the upper portion of the building. They're talking about this blue band as would kind of match the color of their theme and signage, and that the paint would kind of go around the building that you kind of see on the drawings. They kind of marked it up with the blue line to give you an idea. Hours for outdoor seating that were approved by the city previously, Monday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 9:30, Friday 11 to 9:30, Saturday, Sundays 8 to 9:30. Fridays and Saturdays, if there is a band, the petitioner would like to keep the outdoor seating open till 10. Now, the Plan Commission typically isn't the outdoor music police. That falls in the hands of the outdoor music permit through our clerk's office. But obviously, if the Plan Commission has concerns, we should make that known. And then due to the continued, outdoor music and the proximity of the residential area, if any complaints were to arise into the future regarding any kind of outdoor events or music, the petitioner would need to immediately rectify those issues, and that could be cause for this to come back to Plan Commission to reconsider allowing this outdoor area. And as we noted, like I said, Common Council and the clerk's office oversee the final outdoor music stuff. Other than that, there's no other outdoor changes really proposed as part of this. And the only other item we noted when we did a site inspection was that there was an awning feature that was kind of in the back of the building, kind of just laying out there. I don't know what it's from. It's not their business. It's a different business name. They just kind of tidy things up and clean up that before they start using the space.
Questions, comments? Is anyone here for the petitioner?
Good evening. My name is Brian Lear. I live across the street from Tailspin at South 64 West 18322 Martin Drive. I understand that in your conversation you mentioned you're not the outdoor police, so I'm not going to go into a big thing about that. However, last year they had in 17 and a half weeks, they had 20 outdoor concerts. That is exceptionally loud in a residential neighborhood, to the point where on Thursdays and even some Sundays, I cannot sit in my house without hearing the music. And I cooperated with Jen for a period of time and still do, to try and come to some sort of solution. They had one on May 12th of this year, and they told me that they were going to monitor the noise and turn it down, the amplification, come to my driveway. They did not do that. Had discussions with them over a period of time. I guess my point is, this is a residential neighborhood. Their primary source of business is serving drinks and food, and we've all been in those types of establishments. They are not an outdoor music venue. And this proposal, part of that use is for that purpose, the outdoor music venue. I have no problem with them earning business, making money, contributing to the community. That's awesome, and they do a good job of that. It's just that is not their primary inherent course of business, and it infringes on me every Thursday when I come home from work. My wife literally drags me out of the house and finds me something else to do because it's really annoying. And I know there's other neighbors, they're not here for whatever purposes, that feel the same way. But given that this location is going to be used for at least part of that, I'm very concerned about the noise that radiates. It sits in a hole and amplifies upwards. So that's kind of my concern.
Thank you.
Thanks.
One thing I'll note, and I think makes the owners, the concerned residents' points valid, is this is actually a single-family residentially zoned property. The only reason it's a bar is it's grandfathered in. It has a conditional use grant, so it's legal to be there, but that just stresses the idea of this being in a residential area.
Thank you.
I mean, I've always been one of these that, you bought a house next to a bar, you're going to get some noise. However, they bought a house next to a bar, not an outside concert. So part of that's, I'm not sure how much that affects what we're going to discuss here tonight. It's probably going to be more for the Common Council to look at when we talk about their approval of their hours and stuff like that. Regardless of what we do here tonight, if we do approve this, I probably will have a discussion with the owner of letting her know that you can spend all this money on this and you can, use this, but there's a chance that your ability to have outdoor concerts or outdoor music, or at least the type, may be limited in the future. So she may want to reconsider what kind of investment she's going to put in that. Now that has nothing to do with the stripe around the building. So.
Relative to that issue, and again, it doesn't impact what we do, but in order to do an outside music venue, does it have to be permitted for that use?
So what happens is they apply for an extension of their premise for their liquor license and an outdoor dance permit. And now they have these approved right now through the end of June. That's when all licenses expire. So this will be coming back to the Common Council for the renewal of their, not only the liquor license, but their premises and everything else for this, starting July 1st.
And this hasn't happened in a while, but I mean, the Plan Commission, I believe, has the ability to say no music. I don't think we're there, obviously.
Right.
You know, but if that's something the council wanted the Plan Commission to reconsider sometime, I think that could be an option. Hopefully there can be some middle ground worked out that it's good for everyone, but yeah.
Adam, so it's a conditional use grant. So so plan approved that at some point.
Well, I think this was, there were certain ones that were like an automatic conditional use grant when our ordinances, when we became in a city. And I think this is one of those just given the date range of 63. So it wasn't like the approvals you'd have today.
Yeah. So then the local would be similar to this.
So then plan would have we really have no instrument to enforce. In other words, removing the CUG.
No, because that would close all business. So no, I would say we probably wouldn't have that ability unless there was something way more serious than this, you know, I'm talking like bigger issues. But I think we definitely have the ability to dictate
an expansion of their.
Yeah. So like, their idea of having outdoor music, because up until, pre-COVID, they didn't have much. I'm not saying they never had no events, but it wasn't to the level they have today.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations too on Rugby State.
Well, what's everyone want to do?
Well, can I ask one more question? So
You can ask 3.
in the intended use, so it does say that permit for Thursday bands submitted 6 to 9:30, but we're not really approving that, right? Just for the record, that's not what we're doing. All right.
Correct.
We're saying we acknowledge that if the licenses allow them to have it, that we're okay with it too. But
because we do limit hours of operation sometimes for businesses in this.
And we could do that.
Okay.
Right now, we don't have that restriction on the business. We don't, right now, I'm viewing this as they want to do this modification outside, but if the Plan Commission is so inclined, you can change their outside use and not allow it. Like that would be within our purview.
Yeah, if you were to say no outdoor music period, then they couldn't even get the outdoor dance permit part. They could still have food and beverage out there.
The CUG would go in front of the Common Council then in June, you said?
That's not a CUG, it's just an extension of their premise license for serving liquor out there, and then an outside dance permit to allow them to have music.
And under whose authority does that get approved then?
The Common Council.
Common Council. So could we say contingent on the approval? Because it is a legitimate concern that this gentleman has brought up.
Alderman Madden, you want
I
to?
was just going to say, I don't want to go back to those days. I remember so many complaints on Tailspin when they were doing things outside. If there's a way we can restrict the hours so that it can't go past, I don't know, most people, I think, especially if they got kids, don't want to hear it after 9 o'clock at the latest. Or do we want to let them do this and, like you said, talk to them and just make sure they understand this isn't necessarily going to fly with council?
What would be ideal, but I think we've learned over time is impossible to do, is have like a decibel level or something. But we have the equipment to measure it. It's very so because a car coming by can blow that decibel level off the charts. So it's almost impossible to enforce.
You'd have to find the location where you.
Yeah, and there's so many, like something just being in the area could trigger that to be a high number that's artificially high. So it's really hard.
Now, I have been aware of, their concerns, the neighbors' concerns and them, and my first kick at it was, okay, I connected them. I'm like, try to work this out. So when I saw this come up on the agenda, I contacted the homeowner and I just asked, have you guys figured this out yet? The response was, well, we met and we haven't quite figured it out yet. We haven't come to a resolution yet, so I mentioned that this is on tonight and encourage them to come if you want to add to that.
Yeah, just as an example, this was the music from, if I can get my phone to work. I don't know if you can hear it. Let me replay it. This was from the May 12th. Oh, my phone's not working.
But regardless, you
here.
can hear it from his yard pretty clearly.
Yeah, you can hear it clearly. And I just want to reiterate one other thing. You know, my intention is not tailspin, not to have some flexibility. I live next to a bar. I didn't know it was a bar. It was a long time ago when we moved in 20-some years ago. But I understand we're going to have some patrons come out late at night and be a little loud. My wife and children and I were tolerant of that. That's an inherent course of business of living next to a bar. So we tolerate. We contact the police when it gets excessive once in a blue moon. But for the most part, we put in earphones. We got sound machines in our bedroom. I have a CPAP, all of that stuff. So we tolerate what we have to because that's what we live in, but this is a little different. This is, and I don't want to, I tried to work with Jen, maybe it's every other week or something. I'll go shopping with the wife as much as I don't want to do that every other
That's an expensive
Thursday.
Proposition.
Like if there's some median, and again, this isn't for you guys per se, it's for, I guess, more the common council. If there's some middle ground we can find, but 20 concerts over 17 and a half weeks, and I think they have 1 to 2 booked every week so far this summer. Every Sunday afternoon, you try and watch a Packer game in September and you're listening to Pat McCurdy scream sex and beer and sing out loud, and there's kids in the neighborhood, and it's not what that area is meant to be.
So if I may make a suggestion, while this body does have the right just to say no outdoor music, I'm not quite sure we're there completely yet at this point, but what I would maybe recommend is, can we bring this back for review September, October? Leave it, we'll be discussing this more at length with the petitioner for the common council level for the license expansion. In the meantime, maybe we can get some discussion with the neighbors also of what is acceptable. There's a difference. Maddie does outside music on every Sunday. It's acoustical music. It's quiet. I doubt anyone would, well, I shouldn't say that. I'm surprised what some people complain about. I'm not saying you're being unreasonable here at all. But maybe she just switches the type of music she has and the hours of it. But I guess I'm trying to find a happy medium here if we can. Sometimes when you try to make everyone happy, you make no one happy. But I'm not ready to have. I'm not comfortable having us close the door completely on it right now. But let's try working this out. If we can't, then we can always bring this back, and then we can close the door on it in fall. But it gives the common council, coming up at the end of this month, time to have conversation and put more demands on the petitioner. She may not even be aware of where we're at on this, but feeling she does. But
the nice part of amplified music is it has the volume. I mean, right? I think it's more the volume it's played at. It sounds like from what I'm hearing than the quantity of it, right? If it's quiet.
And as big of a fan I am of Pat McCurdy, you mentioning that that's not appropriate music to have in a neighborhood with kids.
Yeah. In some communities I've been in, bars would have to get a permit for every event.
They do. And they're just listed, when they get their approval, they list the dates specifically.
All at once.
Yeah.
If they had to do them individually, you could say, okay.
But we do have the ability to always pull them back.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Mayor, you had mentioned before that this is done by the end of June for the permit they have presently?
Their existing permit and all that ends, at the end of June.
Okay, because this gentleman said that they plan on having bookings all summer long.
I'm sure they do plan on it, because that's what, she wouldn't be putting this kind of, spending this if she wasn't planning on doing this long-term. And we had talked as a body, we said, well, if you're going to make this long-term, make it look better. We didn't get into the, effect on the neighborhood part of it. So I think that's probably where some of our elected officials maybe need to weigh in on this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we want to set some kind of date in the resolution, or just have it more of a in the minutes thing? I guess it's effective either way. It's irrelevant.
somebody can make a motion to, bring this back in, say, the October meeting for reconsideration or whatever we decide. I would find it, we still need to discuss the other part of this, but and actually discuss pretending like everything's good. Do we like even what you're proposing? We haven't even gotten into that part yet, so let's have a discussion on that. But my thought is I doubt she's going to put the investment into the outside fencing and all that, knowing that it could be temporary. So, but we should probably discuss it either way.
I can support that. I think it's good for as you suggest, Mayor, for the petitioner to know the various enforcement actions that various bodies can do and what she could be up against, and if she really wants to make that investment, knowing what these various bodies could do, then I think as long as that's transparent, I have no problem.
Is your microphone on, sir?
Yeah. Oh. I have no problem. As Alderman Madden said, we've been through this as alderman 20 years ago, and
Oh, yeah.
so I have no problem supporting that.
And I think what's important is if they don't want to put this investment, and I think it's probably good to bring it back because the whole idea was for them to have even outdoor, even the eating and drinking, they had to make it look extra good.
Right.
And if they don't even want to do that, then maybe it's a bigger discussion for a different day.
Right. Which she may want to just do it for eating and drinking.
Sure.
Which everyone likes eating outside, so. And I doubt that's where their complaint is, so.
Right.
So, moving further into the conversation on this, what is the thoughts? Let's start with the stripe. What does everyone think about that? Any issues?
The what?
The blue stripe they want to put around the building.
Oh.
I have no issue.
Any accent color to a building and enhancing the property, I have no problem with.
I have no problem.
All right. And then the proposal for what do we call that?
The brick columns.
Columns that they want to put up is that kind of what we were looking for when we said pretty it up? I believe, Commissioner Groff, you were the one quoting you.
I was. I would say for a aged building like this, anything is better than nothing. So I can agree with it.
I think the one thing they did that was really helpful too is it was kind of a mix of gravel and concrete. It's all uniform concrete now, so it definitely that cleaned it up quite a bit.
The wood fence actually is a step up from what they had.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why they close late on Mondays? Close early?
Really? Were you looking for someplace to go one night, or?
I guess the only question I have on the drawing is, it says trash can. Is that's not an enclosure of any sort? That's just a trash can that sits. So yeah, there's a sketch, right? It says band area, bar area, and then it just has trash can. So I was just wondering, what is that?
I was out there and took pictures, and I don't recall. Let me see if I can find my photo to see what was there.
Yeah, and maybe that's all it is. Maybe it's just trash for the outdoor seating or something, but.
That looks like the egress point. So if people are walking out with a beer or whatever, they toss it in before they.
Yeah, there is not like a dumpster or anything in that area now in the photos I took a week ago. And yeah, I mean, if they just start plopping a dumpster right out there by the road, that'd be something we'd have authority over because we wouldn't want that just sitting way out there like that. That area right now is kind of just that retaining walls they mentioned, and there's nothing there now. So yeah, I'm hoping that, like you mentioned, it's kind of the way out. So hopefully it's just a garbage can to throw your stuff in before you go in the parking lot.
Adam, what is it? Bar area, new bar getting built. This section has new concert?
I think.
It's supposed to be concrete.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be concrete. And yeah, that bar area, it's very simple what it is, but just a bar top, nothing crazy. It's not a covered structure or anything like that.
Is it possible, looking at where the band area is, it appears to me that if you were to locate the band where the stop sign is facing towards the bar area, the sound would not be going towards the community, but rather into the bar?
Well, you may be right, except the gentleman that came up here, you'd be
Lives.
pointing it towards his house now.
Like you said, we could make nobody happy in this
The
process.
fact that he actually put the energy of coming here, I would suggest not.
My apologies.
So approved as presented with bringing it back for,
Any amendment on that, or?
yeah. on that,
Probably-
We could just
prob-
put it as part of the minutes.
Whatever, yeah, whatever you guys prefer.
Is it?
Make the motion, make it cleaner. Make your amendment is just to come back for a review in the October meeting
Exactly.
for the outside music use.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you. Moving on to Resolution PC 041-2022, approval of building site and operation amendment for St. Leonard's Congregation located on Westwood Drive.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is for St. Leonard's Church, as was mentioned, to build or construct a columbarium on the north central portion of their property near their outdoor altar. For those of you that don't know, a columbarium is basically an above-ground vessel to keep ashes in for loved ones. So I'm not aware if we have any in the city. If we do, I don't even know about them, but this is the first one we've had formally come through us. You know, one thing we've heard from many of our local funeral homes as of late is, you know, cremations are just on the rise, growing at a fast pace. So hence more, space or locations for urns is really critical according to most funeral homes, which transfers over to a lot of churches. So what they're looking at doing is they kind of have you'd want to call it a long-term or, kind of full build-out plan that would include 7 above grade structures, all having 12-inch by 12-inch niches, that would house these remains. And it would be like an octagon structure in the middle with 6 additional rectangular structures kind of surrounding it. It would be around a 41-foot octagon or hexagon shaped patio area, would have some landscaping around it, and probably have some seating, I would guess or envision. Definitely not near any lot lines. I think it's 121 feet from the nearest property line, excuse me. And as far as it goes, like I said, they would definitely do phasing just based on cost and need. So they would probably start with the first phase of the project being the concrete pad, that center octagon structure and the landscaping. And then as space would warrant, they would be allowed to add these additional structures and benches and such. One of the things we have known in the resolution is normally a building site operation plan approval is valid for 2 years. Now, obviously, it might take them more than 2 years before they have a need or funds to do more. And so we did kind of have a note in there, as I don't want to speak for the planning commission, but thinking that if this takes a little longer than that, that's understandable. And if it's a bit longer, we're kind of approving the overall idea now, even though I might do it in pieces. So staff definitely doesn't see any issues with this. Think it'll be a nice addition for the community. Sounds like they will be opening up to many users that may want to utilize it. I think it could be a nice new thing here.
I have one question, unless you want to add something before I ask my question. So I hope this doesn't come to be, but it's not unheard of for Catholic churches to get closed, consolidated, moved. What happens to this one if that happens in the future?
Well, actually, the state requires a 25% perpetual care fund. So that has to be established first. And so it's always going to be maintained, even if we consolidate. If we join parishes, we're still probably going to be there. We're the only parish in Muskego. Mm-hmm. The closest one is Big Bend. So if the Archdiocese had a 2020 plan where they were talking about maybe consolidating the two, but now that we have more priests, that's out of the question. So we're probably not going to, but way, way, way in the future, that's why we have the perpetual care for it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there anything you wanted to add for this?
I think it's a great opportunity for the city since there isn't one. It's obviously for our parishioners, but it's open. It's going to be open for everybody in the city. We've had, I think I put in my notes that
in the last 6 months, we've had 34 funerals. 24 of them have been cremains. And so there's definitely a need for this. I think it'll add to our landscaping since we have the altar right there. We also have a little prayer area for people to go to that's real close. So, we're looking forward to it.
Can I ask how the in perpetuity is funded?
Yes, we will be obviously you sell the niches. And so 25% of those proceeds have to go into that fund. That's a state statute.
How many total niches?
432 at the completion, but obviously we're going to do it in stages. We're not going to do the whole thing at once.
You anticipate it growing?
I'm sorry?
Do you anticipate it growing beyond 432?
Boy, I tell you, if we sold 40 a year, that'd be 10 years. So, if we had to, we could. We've got plenty of room in the area, so we could expand if we had to.
How many parishioners are there?
We have 1,600 families. Oh, I'm sorry, 1,700 families. So if each family is an average of 3 point whatever.
So we need an actuary here to figure out the.
Yeah, right.
Further questions?
Nope.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Resolution PC 04, yes, sir. Resolution PC 044, 2022, approval of a certified survey map for David Helm on behalf of Joyce Swata, located on Woods Road.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
This is a pretty normally straightforward CSM, just with one little unique thing to it. This is part of an area that was originally platted as a subdivision, and it was kind of an outlot, kind of always in the western part of the subdivision. There's an existing house with some outbuildings that are kind of on the northern portion of the site. It sounds like the owners kind of put this up for sale. There's been some interest of some people wanting that, but not necessarily wanting the whole property, or the owner wanting a portion of the property. So lot 1 is the northern lot, contains the house, the 2 outbuildings. That's pretty straightforward. The only slightly unique thing there is that our ordinance talks about when a lot has, for when it comes to frontage on a cul-de-sac, has to have at least 45 feet of frontage, which they do meet. Typically, we kind of interpret that to say it's 45 at the road, and then it widens to 80 feet, which is our typical access width, and then it widens to the minimum average width. This runs that 45 feet for such a minimal distance. Staff does not have an issue. It'd almost be really unconventional if we kind of follow that to the T, and being it's a land division ordinance, Plan Commission has a lot of jurisdiction over that. So we don't have a problem with the way lot 1 is, and it is accounting for enough frontage, which is key. When it comes to lot 2, the biggest issue with lot 2 at this time is the lot right now is about 95 to 98% floodplain. The owner knows that. And if you look at the map, it's on the screen right now, you'll see that the blue is the floodplain. So it's pretty much the whole lot. Now, floodplains aren't impossible to build in. Obviously, really probably a bad idea. But with certain flood studies and things like that, it is possible to build on it. Now, the amount of time and cost and effort probably would outweigh the practicality of it. And a big thing to note is that the DNR and FEMA have been working with municipalities for a couple years now to propose a new floodplain mapping to this area, as they feel there's a lot of discrepancies that are basically showing the floodplain too large, which is probably a good thing for a lot of the residents. And the draft maps we have for this property show the floodplain significantly less. Now, FEMA's been promising, or DNR promising, they're going to approve that for the last couple of years, and they keep saying that. And I recently, in the last, month or two, heard it might be 90 days away, but they've said that before. So either way, our suggestion is to label outlot 2 as an outlot and derive some kind of restriction that basically is saying it's unbuildable unless you do all these floodplain things, which wouldn't be practical until the time the floodplain is reanalyzed. And if that does happen, the change would be obviously retroactive to everybody. So outlot 1, or whatever we end up calling it, could become a lot more buildable at that time. So it's near impossible to build on now, and could become very buildable if those maps change. And so that's just kind of why this was a discussion item and not a consent.
Comments? petitioner here, do you want to add anything?
No, I mean, so right now, like the lot to the south is my mom's. I'd still like to hang on to the 2 acres that's in the floodplain, just been kind of, waiting this out and hoping that this does get changed in the near future, in the future, and I just got plans of hoping to build there at some point, so. But I do have interest in the northern, in lot 1, and people willing to work with, fixing that up and getting rid of the eyesore that it has been. So it's been 20+ years of renters in there that would
Sure.
happy they're gone.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Approval of resolution PC 045-2022, approval of a building site and operation amendment for Opal Fuels on behalf of GFL Muskego located on College Court.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Discussion?
So as the mayor stated, this is for really, natural gas, compressed natural gas CNG refueling station, GFL. I don't know if they currently have done this or if it's part of their future planning, but definitely are looking at having at least 45 trucks that will be converted to be able to run on that natural gas. And as part of that, they kind of need to have these safe and planned out refueling stations. The site's kind of out of sight, out of mind. It's kind of tucked back in that smaller park. If you do drive by it or if you do look on an aerial photo, it's kind of a mess of trucks and dumpsters, kind of nature of the business. So this will actually, I think, being a feature that will tidy up the site a little bit, because on that southwestern portion of the site where there are a lot of just random dumpsters and stuff, now it's going to kind of really force that to all be cleared out. One of the suggestions staff was kind of recommending at first was paving, as that's kind of a normal site improvement that we do suggest when someone's doing an overhaul. But in talking with Opal Fuels, the applicant, we realized it just wasn't financially feasible, which we understand. These are large trucks to take a toll on the ground they're on. But they will have these overhead kind of truss systems that on the eastern part of the site first is where the gas gets fed in, and there's some equipment over there that has to prep it for these vehicles. It's then piped underground to the west to these 3 big truss systems, 2 which are double loaded, 1 that's single loaded. And then, like I said, I think it's up to approximately 45 vehicles or something like that will be allowed to, or maybe 32 refueling. Actually, there's a couple, refueling areas, a 32 bay, 24 bay, and a 12 bay, it looks like, total 68. And the trucks would then go into these bays to be fueled for their natural gas, so then that they are, able to be used the next day. So definitely clean energy, which is, I'm sure, a favorable thing for sure. Other than that, it's not really a lot of change to the site. Any areas where they have existing truck parking on the east is going to stay that way for the non-natural gas vehicles. There wasn't a lot of questions with the layout and things like that. We just have a few conditions noting like the bollards on certain sides of that enclosure area, which the enclosure area is covered by a 6-foot fence, that if the bollards are really visible on 2 sides, they should be painted white to match the fence. And on the sides where they're more internal, we're allowing the yellow for safety purposes. We're allowing yellow bollards by the actual fueling stations because they are so far removed from the road. Obviously, the natural gas, we want everyone to be safe around those. And they will have kind of parking stops to kind of designate where each truck needs to go, since you can't paint marks on the ground for gravel. So staff does not have an issue with this, as long as just all the contingencies in the resolution are followed. I think it will be a nice way to do something that's obviously good for the environment, as well as tidying up a portion of that site.
Questions, comments? Petitioner here, they want to add anything or not? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Approval of building site and operation plan for Joe Coy. Is it Coyley or Coy? Agent for Dish Wireless LLC, located on Test Corners Drive. Resolution.
Move to approve.
Discussion.
So this is for a co-location, which is an additional antenna on an existing wireless facilities tower. We have not had a co-location in a long, long time. They used to be, a dime a dozen. I think we had plan commissions, maybe a decade ago or maybe a little less, where we'd have one of these a meeting, it seemed like. And the process and our code used to be a lot more involved than it is now, due to some federal and state law changes. there's a lot of kind of guaranteed rights these towers and co-locations have. So you could say it stripped some of the city's rights or ability to regulate, but on the other hand, I think part of that was because there's not a lot to regulate. These towers are all over. So when it comes to the co-location, after reviewing our code with our city attorney and all the state law changes that have happened in the past few years, we kind of put together a new process, which we kind of called the new norm, I guess, as far as how these work. So Plan Commission has to review it. The only thing that's really unique is that we have to make sure the tower is structurally stable enough to support it, which they have an analysis that shows that, so that's not a worry. The only really unique thing is that our ordinance does talk about any ground equipment has to be housed within an existing structure on site, and there's only allowed to be one structure on the base of the site. Not all, some facilities that could become an issue down the road because some of them have very small buildings and our ordinance wants the equipment to be inside so it's not all outside and kind of gets a little messy or sloppy. This facility does have a building that did have space available in it, so luckily they were able to put all the equipment in the existing structure that is at the base of the ground. The only thing that you really notice would be there'll be a generator panel that's on this one outside wall, which is already adjacent to an existing electrical panel. And the only reason that's there is because this is by one of the Test Corners Fire Department locations, and there's a masonry wall surrounding it, and there's just a tight space that they couldn't have this equipment anywhere else. So staff definitely doesn't see an issue with it. We think this is an easy approval, clear approval, and just another set of antennas on a building that tower that's already there.
Comments?
Very straightforward.
Hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Resolution 047, 2022, approval of a building site and operation plan amendment for Pop's Kettle Corn located on Janesville Road, Unit 2.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
Sorry, Mayor. So Pop's Kettle Corn has purchased some space within a multi-tenant building, which currently houses AutoZone, which is kind of near Janesville and Racine, just kind of west of there. As far as that goes, the front of the building it's kind of a conduit building, meaning that it's not just tenants, it's actually ownership. And so Pop's purchased the rear portion of the building. The tentative plans are eventual activities for Pop's Kettle Corn to be located here. As part of that, they need to get equipment into the space and do work in the space and so on. And as part of that, they want to install an overhead garage door on the east side of the building, on the southern portion of the east side of the building, and that is going to be currently proposed as an aluminum garage door. So the idea is to do something that they can get kind of quick and prompt so they can get going on renovations and such. And the concern when we first talked with the owner was just the idea of the aesthetic. This building is a commercial storefront, it's got glass, it's got brick, it has different materials. Aluminum garage doors is something you typically would think of. So kind of a common ground that we kind of proposed or thought of. And the applicant did submit in front of you. The paper is kind of a revised submittal. So if you look at the hard copy papers in front of you, that's kind of an updated version, which does mirror a resolution. And as part of that, they are proposing this aluminum garage door, but what they're proposing to do is kind of paint the door to kind of match the adjacent brick and, the wall material, the brick and stuff. So, a portion of it will be, the gray, and a portion of it will have the tan, and it will look more uniform. And the idea is to give that a kind of a 1-year run to, number one, see how it looks, and number two, let them get their stuff in there. And then at the 1-year mark, so a year from now, the applicant would need to come back. And at that time, we can either say, hey, wow, this looks good and we're okay with it. It may, it's, seeing's believing kind of scenario. Or at that same time, the owner has thrown out the idea that they may look to do a sign on it. So instead of having a wall sign, do almost like a graphic or a logo as a sign on it, which could help with the aesthetic of it. And or one thing staff suggested, but may not be practical depending on the use, was maybe a glass garage door, just because the glass garage door would match the aesthetic of the building, if you did something that matched trim color. So basically it's giving them a year as let's help them get moved in and kind of call it a trial run, and then have them come back next year either way to kind of see where things are at and what the owner wants to do and what the plan commission thinks based on what we saw out there.
Discussion? I don't have a problem with phase 1. We'll see where phase 2,
Right.
what we look like after a year.
Right.
This isn't back in a rural area on North Cape Road. It's by a high traffic area, so we'll see what we can come up with. But yeah, this will help you get going. This is great. Any other
And that's the way it's been written up is phase 1, phase 2.
Yeah, that they have to come back, and then it talks about what could be the option. So it'll come back in May of 2023, and then it talks about what, could it stay, depending on plan commission, like how it looks. Could it be a logo, which could be a proposal, which same thing, you'll have to agree with how it looks. Or do we propose something that's maybe a little more fitting, like a glass door?
Right.
Any other comments? Normally I'd ask the petitioner, but at this point, I don't want to have you talk us out of it, so. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Resolution 048-2022, approval of a sign permit application for Sign Effects, Inc. on behalf of the Muskego, Norway School District located on Racine Avenue.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Discussion.
So this proposal is to seek plan commission approval. Anytime there's a sign that really, we're not sure how it fits into the code, kind of unique thing, the plan commission kind of has to help make some calls here as far as do they feel it meets certain criteria or not. And this, it doesn't happen a lot, but this school and the stadium, which is where this proposal is over at the high school, has some unique things going on there. And what they're looking at doing is they're looking to commemorate the state championships that the high school football team has won. And as part of that, they want to create a bowl effect by mounting this commemorative feature on top of the press box. So the sign is designed in a way to kind of match the theme of the stadium and the scoreboard and, be lit then on game days. The original design that staff saw from the applicant was a very traditional roof sign, I would call it. It was a sign mounted with brackets to the roof. There wasn't a backer behind it. As much as staff tries to see how things can fit in the code, it really didn't, unfortunately. So meeting with school district staff out there and stuff, we kind of came up with the idea, is there a way to kind of extend the front of the wall of the press box up and then put a sign on that? Because in theory, then it's a wall sign, which a wall sign is allowable. So it was trying to get creative with still achieving their same goal and just figuring out how we can we do that. So what the sign company came back with was basically building what they're calling like a backer board or backer feature. So what you see on the drawings that are up right now, the corrugated metal, which is a metal paneling that is used on the wings and the lower portion of the press box right now. So they're matching the material. They're basically building what they're calling a wall feature. Now it is still mounted to the top of the roof, but it's, from the front view will kind of look like part of it, just recessed. And that will be that backer board, like I said, corrugated metal with a metal frame to it, and then we'll have some support structure behind it. This backer then is mounted to the top of that press box, and it does from the front kind of give a visual extension. It's not right up to the edge of the wall, it is set back. As far as that goes, then the sign will have then the proposed signage itself mounted on it. So the signage you see would be mounted onto the front of that backer board that was proposed. This is similar to the kind of original idea roughly that was proposed. So there's a couple questions that the code talks about relating to things here that the Planning Commission needs to talk about. One of the things that is talked about is as it relates to the height of the backer feature, if they're deeming it a wall feature, there's the question of, it exceeds the height allowance in the zoning district, the I-1 district that they're in. Now the code section that talks about height of walls, because if that's what they're calling it, a wall feature, that's what we have to look at, does talk about the Plan Commission being able to grant waivers for certain items, and the items that it mentions, and the Plan Commission will have to kind of determine does it fall under one of these loosely, would be cooling towers, elevator bulkheads, fire towers, monuments, penthouses, stacks, scenery lofts, tanks, water towers, ornamental towers, spires, masts, aerials, gymnasiums, and other necessary mechanical apparatuses. So those are allowed to kind of waive the height if the Plan Commission feels this wall feature, if that's what they deem it would meet. Also then there's the question of, is it a wall or is it a roof sign? And what the code basically states is just that in no case shall the highest point of a sign extend above the point of the eave of a building which houses the business unless otherwise approved by the Plan Commission. We have that noted because the kind of lacing football stripes that are on the top of this do exceed the top of that structure. But because of that, unless waived by the Plan Commission, that's something the Plan Commission can gladly grant a waiver to if they want. Then you'll see in the supplement, there's kind of some criteria that the plan commission should be looking at if they do want to, review this sign. So there's really 3 questions the plan commission needs to decide. Number 1 is it a roof sign or is it a wall sign? And if they're saying it's a wall sign, that means you're kind of deeming this backer feature to be part of a wall and not really a roof sign. So that's one question. Question 2 would be, are you okay with this backer feature exceeding that 35-foot height based upon one of those criteria I mentioned? And the third question would be, can the top of the sign extend above that feature? So can those laces be above the top, which is how it's currently proposed, which the plan commission can grant a waiver to?
Discussion.
So I would say it's a wall sign, yes and yes.
Yeah, I think the lace part of it makes it somewhat attractive relative to rectangular signage, so.
Yeah, not just a box.
Right.
Correct.
Any other comments? One thing I will ask going forward, and we're going to be working on this, and Adam and I have talked about this, is this whole area of a stadium and all the things that go along with it never really fits in our code, and we really need to address it. Now, by the time we do that, this particular stadium may be complete, I would think, but then who knows, maybe they're going to build a soccer stadium next and baseball stadium after that, so it's probably something that we do need to tackle in-house to make our jobs a little easier up here.
Yeah,
So,
I think doing some kind of athletic complex kind of thing in general could be really helpful because these are unique scenarios.
yeah.
Be a good time to create one.
Any further discussion?
How is it going to be lit? Did you mention that?
I think the channel letters are lit.
They're backlit, aren't they?
Like backlit or something like that?
The sign representative is here.
I think he has the answer.
My name is Josh from SignFX, the sign vendor for the project. The letters will be internally illuminated with LEDs.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
Does the football light up when they score a touchdown?
We can work that into it if that gets us approval.
A complaint from the neighbors.
Although they did just take some liberties on some of these state championships, but.
No, but it looks good. It looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
It's on your dime.
Make that happen.
I'm sure it's just a computer chip.
Just a matter of time, right?
Yeah.
And we'll-
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other miscellaneous business?
None.
Otherwise, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned at 7:22.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night, everyone. See you guys.
You too.